Record. Aloha, everyone, and thank you for joining us in our presentation, Family School Partnerships. I will be having my co-host, Marissa, assist me in controlling the slides, and she will be presenting later on. So to start, I wanted to share about my organization, Leadership in Disabilities and Achievement of Hawaii. LDAH has grown to be one of the leading nonprofits in Hawaii, serving individuals with disabilities and their families. We operate as a parent training information center to enhance educational, work, and life opportunities for children and youth with or at risk of disabilities by empowering them and their families through screening, identification, information training, mentoring, and by public outreach and advocacy. We are one of nearly 100 parent training information centers, also known as PTIs, and Community Parent Resource Centers, or CPRCs, in the US and territories. We serve Hawaii, American Samoa, the Federated States of Micronesia, Guam, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, and the Republic of Palau. We serve families of children of all ages, birth to age 26, and all disabilities such as physical, cognitive, behavioral, and emotional. We hope that this information being shared today will help by increasing family capacity and understanding the connection and benefits of parent-school partnerships using an inclusive approach inspired by the PTA model of engagement. In working with parents as a PTI center, we have learned that the parents want their voice and the voice of their child or children to be heard, that they want their school and teachers to know and understand their child's specific disability and that their child is capable of higher achievement if the teacher understood the children's learning needs, strengths, and disability. Inclusion embraces value and diversity. An inclusion approach embraces the family's perspective along with the school and teachers. It gives a voice to the parents advocating for their child, a voice that can be heard and decisions that can be considered. Sorry about that. In developing effective IEP plans and appropriate placement and accommodations. An inclusive approach is vital when advocating for services. When schools collaborate with an open mind and embrace cultural differences and accept diversity, they build stronger relationships based on trust. So next is individualize, meeting the unique needs of the family and child. Parents know their child best, and not all children have the same educational needs. It is important for school professionals and teachers to tailor their approach based on the uniqueness of the child and meeting the parents where they are at. How much do the parents know about our services or about the services that are available to their child? It is important for teachers to ask questions, build rapport, and invest some time in getting to know their student's family. Next is integrated. Connect and align efforts. Go above what is expected. Teachers can think of innovative ways of getting the most out of parent-teaching meetings. Parents can share their experiences at home and connect with works at home and how it might work at school or vice versa. Next is impactful. Parent and school partnerships support the child's success. Schools can create opportunities to engage with families. Families can gather information, increase their knowledge and understanding of what's going on in their child's school and how the child is advancing in their learning and how they are reaching their goals and outcomes. The impact of family engagement. Shared understanding between parents and teachers enables a collective effort to effectively plan and improve decision-making when working on the goals and objectives for the child. Expanding communication and engagement outside of the walls of schools between parent, teachers, and the students creates unique learning opportunities. An example will be the current distance learning model. Parents and teachers are co-designing learning to support and improve outcomes for students with an IEP who are learning at home. Some schools have even implemented hybrid models where the student goes on campus once a week and learns at home for the remaining days of the week. The impact of family school engagement increases positive outcomes for the child. IEPs and family school partnerships. Family school partnerships should be inclusive in co-designing IEPs, SMART goals, and objectives. Families and schools can work collaboratively in creating school and academically inclusive spaces for learning. Two-way communication between the family and school equips teachers in understanding the child's specific disability and how to best approach, teach, and support the student. Powerful learning starts with collective engagement and strategies. Gathering as much information between the school and family helps in building a supportive roadmap towards academic achievement, appropriate placement, modifications, and accommodations needed. Discussing assessments, test scores, sharing academic resources, and tips and tricks on reinforcing positive behaviors are some examples and ways parents and teachers can engage as partners. Here are things to consider when starting an open conversation and sharing how to best support your child within the school. What are my child's strengths? What are my child's needs? And how can we work together to support my child? Partnership between families and schools should nurture the child academically as well as to the child's developmental and social emotional growth. The family and school share accountability to achieve equitable outcomes for the student. Collective planning. As the parent, you are the expert and know your child best. Communicating as much information with the school and having the school share your child's successes and challenges helps in developing, reviewing, and revising the IEP as a team. Positive family-school interactions help to secure appropriate services and accommodations. Collective planning is the cornerstone of impactful engagement. When parents and teachers come together to work collaboratively, productive goals and outcomes are created. Ideas are shared on how to support the child. Communication tools. Parent-teacher partnerships support the child at home and in school. Support can be shared and communicated through communication logs. This can be a short summary that illustrates the child's day in school, where there are any behaviors that may have affected the child's ability to complete an assignment, achievements or accomplishments, upcoming events, or just a check-in. Next, daily achievement reports can be used as a checklist between the teacher and the parent. Upon completing tasks, the child can receive a check mark and may be rewarded at the end of the day or week by parents. Lastly, behavior reports are a great way to track new behaviors or may be used in identifying the cause of behavior. These are just a few examples of communication between the school and families that can be used for support. Collaboration. Parents want what's best for their child and the teacher wants what's best for the student. Together, parents and teachers can co-design inclusive learning at home and at school. This way the child succeeds. I am going to play a video for you, by Jessica Solano that shows you how she engages with her families.
I never had a teacher come to my house before. One time she popped up to two of my friends' houses and she came with chocolate chip cookies that she made by herself. It's really cool.
Kyla has been keeping track of some of her work this year, so she wants to kind of go through and share that with you, kind of let you see some of her goals for school. So you want to start off with Module 1?
On Module 1, I got a 45. Module 2, I got a 35. Then Module 3, I got a 78.
The reason we do this is because if I just see, oh, a 78C, I might think, oh, that's really not that great. But looking at where she came from, that is incredible. I was so proud of you. Ever since I first started teaching, I remember seeing families come in for parent-teacher conferences. Seeing the child next to their family member just made things different. They belonged to someone, and they were someone's whole world. I feel responsible as their teacher to have that open line of communication with their families. I want them to see that. I love you more than I can tell you, and I want to show that in my actions. Easton. Walking. I used to think family engagement was the same as parent involvement, and I learned recently that that is not the case. Changing involvement to engagement is huge, because being involved in something does not have a real sense of commitment, where when you're engaged in it, you're taking a stake in this, and it matters to you what the outcome is. Class. Here. Out here in the air are all those molecules like we talked about. In order for families to really make an impact on their students' performance, they really need to not only know what is expected of them, but they need to know where their kids are at in meeting that expectation and how to get them there. I don't think what I was doing in the past with newsletters and having parents come and volunteer in my class was meeting those goals. Technology really helps a lot with engaging families. I've started doing Facebook Live. That has really been powerful in helping those families who especially can't come during the day to sit into a classroom lesson. Welcome, everybody. We've been doing some pretty tricky stuff in math, something called distributive property. It is really easy. I took home some chart paper from school and I wrote down a few problems, and I've just set up my iPad and bam, we're live. It's more than me just telling them I have a daughter. It's more than me just telling them we got a new cat. This is me letting them come into my life and my house. And so it kind of just helps make that connection a little bit stronger. Bye guys. Have a great night. Thanks for joining us. See ya. This year for me, I feel like because I put so much stake into family engagement, I know other things have kind of fell by the wayside. You would have to be absolutely perfect to be able to get every single thing right in education. So I think it's okay to understand that we're all growing. Building relationships isn't easy. I have to fight every single day to build that relationship with my husband. I have to work every day to build a relationship with my kids and my coworkers. And so that's something I think I see with my students. I would love for it to be easy to build relationships with them, but nothing worthwhile ever is. I want them to really, truly believe that they are capable of doing whatever they set their mind to, that it's going to take hard work, it's going to take practice. It makes me excited to know that I am not alone in this, and that their families are there, and we're all helping develop this child who hopefully will be a better person because of this experience.
I found that video very impactful, especially when I first watched it. I couldn't help but be teared up. And I was amazed when I first watched it because I never experienced this as a child. You can see the child has so much adoration for her teacher for coming to her home. I find Jessica's style of teaching to be innovative and different from the traditional sense of parent-teacher engagement and family engagement. Growing up, traditional parent involvement was going to a parent-teacher conference and reviewing paperwork and work samples. Family-school partnerships and impactful engagement embraces the family and is a shared investment for the child's overall achievement, developmentally and academically. Building bridges, enhancing educational experiences. I wanted to provide you an example of how you can take action in your school and as a community to build collaborations and relationships to foster every child's success. Both families and professionals can take action in different ways, such as for families, you can have school fairs, bake sales, family night, volunteer to help, join a parent group or PTA, and attend community meetings. Professionals can continue to engage with families as often as possible, reach out through Zoom to check in, and embrace cultural diversity. And we're here to help. As a PTI Center, we encourage parents and professionals to attend our workshops. You will improve your advocacy skills, effectively support your child's educational needs in IEP meetings, increase your ability to recognize high-quality services that will increase your youth's ability to self-advocate as they learn about opportunities for college and career paths. We are committed to bringing families, schools, and our community together in partnership in developing successful outcomes for children and youth at risk and who have disabilities. And at our core, we want to be your partner in your family's education and help your child succeed. Give us a call, and we're always here to help with Aloha. And with that, I will pass it on to my co-presenter, Marissa. Oops.
Okay, great. Aloha, everyone. My name is Marissa Babtista. I am the Central District Director for the Hawaii State PTSA, and I'm here to talk to you today about parent-teacher associations and their role in supporting family-school partnerships. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself, so as I mentioned earlier, I am the District Director for the Central District of the Hawaii State PTSA. I also serve as the PTA President of my children's PTSA here in Moanalua at Red Hill Elementary School, and also serve as the parent co-chair for the Community Children's Council. I was born and raised between California and Northern Virginia. We recently moved to Hawaii, back to Hawaii for my husband in June of last year. I've been an active PTA member for about 9 years since my daughter started kindergarten, and have served in many capacities from president to treasurer, both at my local unit and also at the state level within Virginia and Hawaii, and now in Hawaii. I think, you know, PTA and PTSAs have helped me tap into my passion for advocating on behalf of children, not only from a learning perspective in terms of what learning models work best for them, but also from a tool perspective to sort of build a foundation of learning and successful learning within my community. So hopefully I'm going to be able to impart some knowledge today. Next slide. I won't read the National PTA mission word for word for you, but I think the important keywords you want to take away from this description around engagement are every child, potential, engaging, empowering, family and community, and advocating. Okay? Keeping in mind that in terms of engagement, children are more successful when families and schools partner together, when parents and teachers are sharing an understanding of the child together, a holistic idea of what's best for the child as it relates to growth, development, and success. Next slide. You'll see here, and I apologize, it's the PTA mission infographic, and you know, the verbiage is very small, but some of the takeaways from each of the areas are every child, right? So the PTA's mission is focused on all children, not just neurotypical children, but children from different backgrounds, maybe children who have first languages are different from English within the home, children of different abilities. This PTA mission and PTAs cover every child. We're also focusing on the potential. So we're providing the resources, tools, and support within the school in the home and in the community to ensure that that child reaches their full potential. Reality is, focusing more on just being aware and realistic in terms of what challenges and hurdles are there, depending on different types of children and their needs, and meeting those realities with solutions that are appropriate for that child. Engaging and empowering is ensuring that we're not only engaging families, but we're empowering, giving them the tools to also be successful in support of their students. Working in the families in the communities, because PTAs aren't just children within schools and their parents, it's the full community. We're engaging, small businesses, local large businesses, any individual or group that has interest in the success of children can be part of any PTA at both the local and the state level. And the last piece of it being the advocacy piece. I like to say, you'll see later on in the slide, that I think the PTA, the A in PTA is for advocacy, because that's the primary duty and focus of PTA, not only at the national level and the state level, but also at the local level, to ensure that we're advocating on behalf of students, to ensure that they get the best access to tools and resources to make them successful, not only in school, but also in life. Next slide. And you'll see the PTA doesn't do it all themselves. We're very lucky in the state of Hawaii. We have a large number of advocacy partners that are here to help us in the different respects of child success. So you'll see we have our Department of Health, Developmental Disabilities Division. There's also SEAC that's hosting the SPIN conference today. So that's the Special Education Advisory Council. We also have departments within the Hawaii State Department of Education, Halekipa, LDH, which is, Mia's part of, that's my co-chair or my co-presenter. We have the DD Council of Hawaii, as I mentioned earlier, the Community Children's Councils, and there's so many more advocacy organizations that are here to partner with PTA in support of our students and our kids. Next slide. Here are the numbers. And so I'm not going to, focus on any one number, but I think some of the ones that we maybe want to elevate are that 71% of PTAs serve elementary schools. So when we're thinking of elementary, middle, and high school, the entry point of children at different levels of needs is always going to be the elementary school. And I think the structure that is put in place in elementary schools, build comfort and safety for many, not only children, but also their parents. So parents tend to be more engaged in PTAs and PTSAs in the elementary schools. And then they take what they learn from both an advocacy and an organizational aspect and utilize those in, the middle and the high school. So you may not see PTAs as much, but we still exist in those levels of schooling. Here within the Central District, we have about 10 active PTAs, and the numbers within those PTAs they vary in terms of membership from 50 to 300. I think one of our largest groups has 300. But in Hawaii, we have approximately 90 local units across all islands. I also, want to point out that I think these numbers in terms of the number of students served, but also the number of members. If you can see, there are 4 million members within PTA, PTSA, and I think that speaks to the integrity and the foundation that PTA has provided, not only within schools, but also within the community in advocating on behalf of our students and children. Next slide. Okay. You'll see that this is the hierarchy of collaboration across PTA. I actually created an inverted triangle because I wanted to pay particular attention to the largest, the foundational piece of PTA, that's the members. And so, as we mentioned earlier, any member can be a part of the PTA or PTSA. That's parents, that's guardians. I know in Hawaii, our kapunas are a big part, and they play a large role in our family unit. So definitely want to make sure we're getting our guardians involved. Community members, businesses, like I said, anyone who has vested interest in the success of our students students can be a member of PTA. Upon that foundation of PTA is then our local unit schools. So each local unit school can either have a PTA or a PTSA, depending on whether or not it's appropriate to have the student component within that organization. Those are called our local units. And then at the state level, we have districts. So I'm responsible for the Central District, which includes schools like Moanalua High School, Radford High School, Red Hill Elementary, and a couple other middle schools. And we have, I want to say about 3 or 4 districts within Oahu. And then you can see here, there's 1 for Kauai, 2 for the Big Island, and then 1 for Maui. And their primary focus is addressing, within the district and the state level, is addressing those issues, not only within the district that then need to be maybe like as best practices leveraged across different districts, but also to bubble up any concerns that can be handled at the state legislative level. So if we see, you know, that maybe there's a concern around busing within the schools, or there's a question around the curriculum within districts, that's guidance and that's discussion. Those are topics that we share not only within our district, but across districts that we can then work actively on to write resolutions that we can then influence legislation within our state legislature. Okay. And then that's where you'll see the Hawaii State PTSA, and then the National PTA. National PTA's primary focus is ensuring that those resolutions or those legislative changes at the state level then get shared across from state to state and potentially could influence federal law for the country. Okay, next slide. The PTA National Standards for Family School Partnerships. So this is a very critical piece of the PTA. We actually have a full family school program around identifying where each school sort of measures within each of these standards, and then actively working to measurably improve within each of these standards. One also important piece of this national standard framework is that it's also used within the state. So within the state of Hawaii. So within the state of Hawaii, there was a decision made, I think, you know, even with support from SEAC and SPIN, to identify what framework would support their family school partnership. And they use the PTA, the national PTA standards. So you'll see we'll have welcoming all families into the school community, making sure that we're communicating effectively so that it's not just student to teacher, but it's student to teacher to parent, and that's a bi-directional communication. So it's not only teachers communicating to the parents, but also if there are concerns within the home, that those parents also have the ability and the mechanism or the mechanism to communicate back into the schools, not only to the teachers, but also to administrative staff, or if there is maybe mental health concerns, that there's also a mechanism to reach out to the school psychologists that may be available to those students. Speaking up for every child, sharing power, and collaborating with the community. A couple slides later, we'll look at how speaking up for every child can be, can sort of, you know, come to fruition, and sharing power. We'll discuss those in the later slides. Okay, so we'll go to next slide. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, the Hawaii Department of Education has policy 101-14 around family and community engagement partnership. And as you can see highlighted in there are the 6 standards that are from the national PTA. So the state of Hawaii has built their partnership policy around the framework of national PTA. But I also wanted to make sure that we're not only just focusing on PTA as one mechanism or one organization that is sort of the bridge between school and family. We also have organizations or groups like the school community councils within the school. And then also Community Children's Council, which is focused more on our special needs community. Okay, next slide. All right, so yes, advocacy should be the AMPTA. I will read this one because I think this is powerful. The power of PTA, PTA makes a difference, because people tend to think, oh, am I just, you know, selling brownies, or, you know, trying to get you to buy wrapping paper? No, PTA also is focused on advocacy. Over the past 120 years, PTA has helped solve some of the biggest issues facing America's children. So when we're talking about child labor laws, universal kindergarten, the National School Lunch Program, we just recently in Hawaii over the summer had the free school meals, the keiki meals program, that they then also decided that they would extend into the fall. Our PTAs, our parents actually had an active role in advocating on behalf of students. We were tweeting the governor, reaching out to the Board of Education, making sure any venue that had the ability to extend that program, that keiki meals program, did what we needed them to do. And they came through, right? They decided to extend that through the end of the calendar year. And even, the juvenile justice system, we're now looking at the school to prison pipeline. There has been some discussion within the Hawaii State Legislature of how do we ensure that we're aware that that exists, and that we're putting either policy or programs in place to break that cycle. So just note PTA has a hand, and we're always looking for parents, guardians, and community members that want to sort of, hand in hand walk down that path with us in terms of advocating for our students. Next slide. So I know in Hawaii, I learned actually as I moved here that there are a lot of PTOs, and people are always like PTO, PTA means the same thing. I'd say there are two major differences between the two. One, advocacy that, I keep stressing, advocacy and performance of advocacy activities is a requirement in order to be a PTA. You can go that route with a PTO, but there's not necessarily this national body that requires you to advocate on behalf of your students. The other piece of it is a national voice. When we decided to transition in my kids' elementary school this January from a PTO to a PTSA, one of the selling points for the parents in our school was that there would be this national and state body that would support them whenever there was a need. So something as simple as, do you have a meeting agenda and template? Are there bylaws, rules around how we should meet, how frequently we should meet, what we should be talking about? You'll get that, that national support and that state support from a PTA, whereas from a PTO, a lot of times you're stuck sort of just Googling online sort of best practices for parent organizations. I think also one of the strong selling points in my district was, identifying that not all schools are operating at the same level. A lot of times we're working in silo, we work in a vacuum. So we're doing something, we think we're doing great. And it's not until we talk to our neighbor who goes to a different school that we find out, oh, well, they have this program, or, oh, they're getting this type of support. One of the powerful pieces of PTA is ensuring that when we have best practices, as they relate to not only just education, but also the social aspects of school, that we're sharing that across the different schools and the different levels of schooling, so that we're all benefiting from each other. We're all one community. We're all, here together, helping one another. Next slide. Okay. And so these are some of the advocacy resources that are available online. So if you were interested, you could go online and see what federal legislation the National PTA has influenced in the past. What are PTA positions? So if there is an effort or some activity taking place within your school community, within the state related to education, there's a pretty good chance National PTA already has a position on that. So those materials are available to anyone that's interested in reviewing those. The Hawaii State PTSA was chartered in 1926. I don't know the math on that, but that's a very long time. And it is one of the oldest advocacy organizations for children in the state of Hawaii. Next slide. PTA advocacy. So how can you help? I will apologize. This is actually the one slide that I do have to use my notes on because it's a lot. There's a lot of information here, but I'm going to speak really quickly and get through it as quick as possible. So what can you do in 5 minutes? Vote. So when we initially were thinking about this presentation and providing this guidance to the community, it was actually before the election. But just because we've passed the national election doesn't mean there aren't state level elections coming up. So the best way for you in 5 minutes to share your thoughts and feelings and feedback on the process in terms of policies or programs in support of your students is to vote. PTA is working with the Hawaii's new voter voice system. Voter Voice is the grassroots advocacy platform. So if there are areas of policy that you're interested in, you can sign up on this tool and it will auto email you any legislative changes or improvements or updates as they relate to policy that you're interested in following. What can you do in 10 minutes? You can share your concerns with your child's teacher or principal. That's either through email, drop-in. There are usually open house, sessions at the beginning of the school year, during a PTA meeting. Typically, PTAs are meeting either once a month or every other month. Maybe there's a school hosted event. Of course, in the time of COVID, not a lot of in-person type events, but if there were, those are also great opportunities to reach out to your principal, your teachers, and other groups within the school. I know, for the elementary school level, we have parent-teacher conferences, but at our middle school level, we're looking more at the student-led portfolio review. So both of them, great opportunities. You identified something, your child's having a challenge, they're not understanding something, you maybe want to give them extra work, you think they're not being challenged enough. Those are the opportunities that you have available to you that you can take advantage of in 10 minutes. Within 15 minutes, write a local newspaper or an important public education blog in terms of education issues that you're interested in. In 30 minutes, meet with your legislator. I will say, when I first moved here from Virginia, I was surprised that all the schools don't have air conditioning. And so I was like, who's responsible for this? And I briefly, quickly shot an email over to Senator Donna Mercado Kim. And surprisingly, she replied in about a week. Like, I think it was one of her aides replied and said, you know what, come on over and talk to me about these concerns that you had. It took me 10 minutes. We went over, I spent an hour there. I shared my concerns about, air conditioning, about paying for buses, because I don't know of any other state that requires parents to pay for public school buses. And she shared information with me about the budget process for schools being funded, and actually left out of there with more information about some recent budget allocations for my elementary school. So one quick 10-minute email, 5-minute email resulted in, a lot of information and, a good opportunity for me to reach out to our state senator. When we're looking at 1 hour, 1 to 3 hours, I think one of the most important venues that parents have been given recently is access to online testimony during the Board of Education meetings. Pre-COVID, if you were interested in speaking during a Board of Education meeting, you actually had to take off of work because they typically are scheduled around 1 o'clock. During COVID, no one is able to go into the building, so they now allow you to call in and provide your testimony. Granted, the testimony is only 2 minutes, but this is far more access than we've ever had in the past to not only voice our concerns, but voice our concerns to a full board, because of course everyone's home now, so of course you can just log on, but not only the full board, but a full community, the entire state of Hawaii. We have HSTA members on there, there are active advocate parents on there. So we're actually, advocating, but also sharing ideas and best practices in this new venue that we never even thought would be available to us in the past. 1 to 3 hours. They do take about 3 hours, but it's definitely worth at least half an hour to 1 hour of your time. Okay, next slide. So we won't go over detail of these. These slides are going to be available on the website for schools that are interested or parents that are interested in creating a PTA or a PTSA in your school, but they'll go over guidance for running your PTA, what information is available to you at not only the state, but also the national level, and then opportunities for networking, not only within your district, but across the state of Hawaii. Okay, next slide. We'll just keep going through. Next. 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 It's not all work and advocacy. PTA is also just very much aware of the different events that take place throughout the year. So, there's a focus on the back to school program, the parents within the school week. And then I'm trying to think, what are the other, those are probably the primary ones that we're looking at and that they're making schools aware of or parents aware of, in addition to Teacher Staff Appreciation Week that we know are celebrated across the nation that PTAs also support. Next slide. Next slide. And I would just say click 3 times, 4 times, yeah. Stop. Okay, and so these are some of the other programs. Connect for Respect is around bully prevention, healthy lifestyles, around healthy meals and exercise, family reading experiences, ensuring, you know, that we're all ensuring that our students are meeting those benchmarks as they relate to reading. We have a Reflections Art program that focuses on different mediums of art to in support of a different theme every year. STEM and families, ensuring that we have, you know, the science and technology, the engineering, but also the art and math for STEM in our schools. And then the School of Excellence is tied to our National Family School Partnership Program. Next slide. Right. We'll have online available at the national level is a site for benefits for parents. On the next slide, you'll see a slide for benefits for teachers. Next slide. Okay. And then next slide. Lastly are the resources. And so you'll see here we have not only the National PTA link, but also the Hawaii State PTSA link. So if there's anyone, you know, after going through this amazing presentation by Mia and I, that, you know, are interested in visiting those PTA sites, but also LDAH. I will tell you, I've just recently started, probably within the past 4 to 6 months, partnering with LDAH in ensuring that our parents are aware of the parent cafes that they're providing every Friday. It started off as just me as the president of my PTA attending. And then as I started attending the cafes, I was like, this is information that every parent in my school needs to know about. And not only every parent in my school, but also every parent in my district. So we started sharing, you know, the parent cafes on our PTA page, our local unit PTA page, and then also started sharing them on our Community Children's Council page for the district, because there's a wealth of information out there that I wish I was aware of when I was a parent that just moved here, that LDH is providing to parents in the state. So I want to thank you for your time, and you know, I will pass the ball over back to Mia.
Thank you so much, everyone. We will be signing out. And if you ever have any questions, you see our emails there, or go to our websites and we can connect with you with any questions you have. So thank you and aloha.
Aloha.